You want to wait a little bit that.
No, Patty knows what time it is, and unless she's working in Jeffco. A lot of times she's working over at the clinic. Yeah, traffic light. Did you unmute it?
Yep.
Okay.
The traffic is okay coming on 70. I was just there myself.
Were you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 6:01 PM. The Historic Preservation Review Commission, it is July 22nd. Roll call, please.
Patty Tyler. Shannon Glazen.
Here.
Clark Strickland.
Here.
Alternate Erica Dugan.
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Davenport.
Here.
Chair Lisa Manifold.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's start off with our swearing in of our second alternate member.
Okay. Please raise your right hand and then you can just repeat this after me. I, David Grimm, do solemnly declare and affirm that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs, and that I will faithfully perform the duties of alternate Historic Preservation Review Commission board member for the state of Colorado upon which I'm about to enter.
I, David Grimm, do solemnly declare and affirm that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs. And that I will faithfully perform the duties of alternate Historic Preservation Review Commission board member for the state of Colorado, on which I'm about to enter.
Excellent, welcome. Thank you. Yes, please. And then will you sign this? And do you want like a seal and everything? Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Perfect.
Okay,
Great, welcome.
David, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited. This is the first time in 5 years that we have had a full commission plus our alternates. Just to let you all know, since we do have alternates now, I always want my alternates on this commission to be involved because you never know when members can't be here. So it's important to me that the alternates know everything that our 5 current members know. David, is there anything you'd like to share? Anything you'd like to let us know right off the bat?
I'm just excited and kind of honored to be here. Obviously, there's a lot to learn. I'm looking forward to learning a lot, especially some of the local issues and whatever, and hope that I can bring a little bit of extra as an engineer and a little different perspective. So
Well,
I'm very
welcome.
much looking forward to working with all of you.
No, I'm excited. Like I said, I'm super excited. We have an agenda before us. I will take an approval on this, and I will say I know that we got a request for a change in the agenda, but there was also a request to keep the agenda, so we're going to keep the agenda as it has been written. I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Have a second? All in favor by raising your right hand? Any opposed?
I didn't see you guys vote.
Sorry.
Oh,
She's so
Okay.
fast.
So,
Or do we
Michael.
need us to?
Not as
All in favor?
alternate.
Erica,
Yes.
but Erica, since Patty's not here,
Oh,
Erica's our first alternate, so
Oh,
Erica
sure.
can vote, yeah.
thank you.
Which is like, again, that's why we, like, alternates are important because,
Patty has right.
Patty's
6:04, so noted.
Can you make a
now
note?
I think we need to make it. Well, anyway, you should.
I noted
discuss-
6:04 for Patty. Yes, sorry.
So, then I guess since Patty's here, then.
No alternate voting.
Okay.
I'll try to
Alright.
help with that.
No.
Dylan, do we have anyone sign up for public comment
I don't see anyone online. I didn't see anyone.
on the board?
Oh, my God, the worship. No one signed up.
Okay. And does anyone feel they have a conflict of interest in any of the agenda items today? All right, so noted. Everyone has hopefully had a chance to look at the minutes from the 17th of June. I will take a motion for the approval of the minutes. Don't everybody rush. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. I read the minutes. I didn't see any concerns. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Clark. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from June 17th, please raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. All right, Dylan, or wonder any general updates that we need?
I don't think so.
I think I haven't either.
I'm still working on some of the items we've talked about at past meetings, but,
Like the buffer zone?
right, but, I was out last week, so I didn't have
How dare
anything
you
together.
say-
Same, I was out
Vacation.
last week too.
So we didn't get it all together.
Could you comment, or maybe it comes under old business, with the any citizen input from the meetings over the past couple of months?
Oh, sure. Well, we got quite a lot of input. I had a meeting on June 25th, which would have been the most recent kind of community meeting that I would have had. That was focused on community character and neighborhood charm and the like. And I thought it went quite well. I had basically a full room of folks around the
15,
table.
16?
Yeah, I think it was 16. And I think people were really interested in the idea of doing more preservation work in town. I was just pulling out my notes from that meeting. So I think the takeaways really are that people are starting to think like, well, we obviously know that things are changing in town and there's a lot of opportunity and development, things like that going on. And there's some concern about whether that could change character and take away some of that community character and all of that. They brought up a sort of the recognition that things will change, but we should be considerate of what's already here. And so I think, a lot of folks talked about a willingness actually to start potentially listing like the residential properties in town. Which was quite good to hear because it was talked about that about 15 years ago, the city had attempted to do some neighborhood residential historic districts and then kind of got shut down. But now.
Pretty hard.
Yeah, some of the survey work that's been done and a lot more survey work will be needed, but there are a lot of areas in town that have the potential integrity to be like a full district, or at the very least, we could start locally designating residences. And so it seemed like, at least from the folks who are willing to come to the meeting and talk about that folks are a lot more, they have more appetite for talking about that sort of subject and recognizing the benefits that come from that. So that was my big takeaway.
My other takeaway, I just want to add to that, something that, we always hear about people move into town and want to change it. And what I heard from people that had moved into town in like the last 5 years was they moved here because they like what Idaho Springs is and they don't want it to change. They are really interested in preserving it, because that's what drew them here. One of the things we also talked about was allowing people to individually designate their houses. I'm all for that. Like, I think if we can work on how do we streamline that process for people so that if they decide they would like to individually designate their house, particularly if it sits within our period of significance. And the nice thing is, in some of the other districts in town, we can designate what that period of significance is with the local historic district. I think we make that one of our priorities to give them not quite a fast track, but like a smooth track.
Yeah, I think that was discussed quite a lot, is creating like clear materials and guides and things like that for just preservation in general, which we've already talked about within this group quite a lot. And it's just implementing those, and it's work in progress, but I think the fact that a lot of folks have expressed that interest just gives more credence that it's a good use of staff time.
I agree.
I think that another talk, there's been a lot of talk lately about like creating a sense of place in town. Like one of the big talks, which I think you had attended, Clark, about the downtown mobility hub improvements that are proposed, is kind of the work to Idaho Mall and creating it as like a place where people spend time and interact with town rather than just a place where you park and then you walk right to your destination. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities with railroad and mining and all that to create sort of a lot of connections throughout town that better highlight the history that people are interested in. More to come. I am working on starting to write sections of the comprehensive plan. So as I get to historic preservation and that section, I will have more of a set presentation on takeaways and things like that, and to get input and feedback since from this group.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll move on to new business. We have on the agenda two different certificate of appropriateness requests. So we're going to move into the public hearing on the COA for the veranda replacement on 1402 Minor Street. This is a public hearing on the request for a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing veranda at 1402 Minor Street on the front southern facade of the building. The commission is required by law to hold a public hearing on this item. So here's the order of the hearing. I'll invite the city staff to give a presentation. I'll invite the applicant to provide any comment. I will invite public comment. Any questions from the commission may be asked and discussed. And then we close the hearing and we will ask for a motion for the certificate of appropriateness. Are there any questions? Make sense? All right. I now open the public hearing on this request for a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing veranda at 1402 Minor Street on the front southern facade of the building. It is 6:12 p.m. So Dylan, if you'll start us off.
Sure, yes, so there's a report in the packet on my review of this application. For a bit of history, the veranda was originally built in 1888. There's quite a lot of really good history in the applicant's narrative that really digs into, sort of quite a lot about the building, which is kind of fascinating just to read in general. It's had so many uses and changes over time, but you just look at the building and you still see it sort of as what it was back in that period of time. So the proposed project is for veranda replacement. I'd call it essentially like for like, but there will be some slight details to the existing brand, changes from the existing veranda to better complement what was there historically, because there have been changes to that veranda over time, most recently in the 1980s. And so I reviewed this against the 5 criteria for approval. I think in general, it is, as proposed, consistent with the purpose of our regulations. It will not adversely materially affect its historic quality. Chapter 2 on of the design guidelines speaks to porch replacement, for example, and to reconstruct it to match the form and detail of the original using materials like the original. I think this does this quite well. Similarly, I think this will have a positive impact on the historic atmosphere and character of the district as a whole. And yeah, it appears to generally meet all of our current applicable design guidelines. And in fact, improves upon what is there right now. And with all of that said, I'll keep this short and just say that I think it meets the requirements and should thus be approved. And I didn't have any potential conditions, though we probably should add one that says something along the effect of any additional work beyond the scope of what was approved shall require a modification or something to that effect, which I didn't include, but I think probably is just good practice for any COA. And that's it for me, but I'll answer any questions.
Okay, before we get to that, Donna, would you like to come up? Any comment you have is welcome.
May I swear you in for the applicant for the hearing, if you would?
Okay.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Home address?
You can state the facility.
Yep. Donna Klein, 1402 Minor Street. I'm president of the board.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Oh, I do.
Thank you.
You can't make this any better. If you've been by the building, they started putting mortar in. It is impressive the way it looks. And with that ugly veranda there, it just really detracts now from how spectacular the front of this building is. There are still spots on the building that need another coat of the paint removal. There were so many coats on that building. But the mortar's going in, they hope. I don't know how he's gonna do it because it looks like a really big area to me, but Ryan says that he will have the front of the building done within 2 weeks. John Sargent of Deep Roots Rehabilitation Construction would like, if I'm given a certificate of appropriateness, he's on vacation this week, so he would come in next week, he would get his license, construction license. And then he has a lot of administrative things. He's got a timeline that he's got, quite professional. And he's got a lot of administrative stuff. He won't even be up to the project to remove a veranda until late August, maybe. Because he is turning the posts at his facility in Fort Collins. He's turning the balustrade posts up there. He will have it all ready to just come in, take it down. Ryan will go and replace any bricks and remortar where the header is. And then he'll just put it up. So it'll be a smooth, transition. They've worked together on projects before. This isn't their first team of kind of thing. And yeah, Ryan wants to have his part done so that he can move on to the rest of the building. There's nothing spectacular about the rest of the building. It's pretty boring on the west and the north side. It's just flat brick and a lot of mortar. So I don't know how Ryan's gonna get it done in 2 weeks, but he says it will. So, and he hasn't failed me yet. So when he says he's gonna have something done, it's done.
So they're anticipating that the veranda, it will be up within a day or so, 2 days? You give you
I would give him a week from the time it comes down, yeah. But who knows? I don't know. This guy is so efficient. He comes up, he looks at the building, he says, yep.
Okay.
And we're using the same architect that we used with the state for the paint removal. So she's familiar with it. We'll use the same process as we would with the state, but we're private pay. So there's no time lapse with dealing with the state.
And our COAs are still good for a year.
Yes,
kept
and they
that.
can then be renewed. But for now, it's you.
Okay, does the commission have any questions for either the applicant or staff?
Yes, on the mortar, I didn't see it on the construction plans as to what type of mortar it is. Is it like, I'm assuming it's a low strength mortar.
It's the same recipe as what was originally used.
So they basically took a sample with it, okay.
They analyzed it and he has to put it in for the grant. For the interior department, you have to use like with like.
Okay,
It also is what keeps the brick strong. If you use Portland, it doesn't protect the brick. What was in there is what would protect the brick further. So yeah, he's using the same recipe.
Posts on the veranda, the main supports posts, those are turned as well.
Not real fancy turns, but they'll be turned.
They are turned, they're not
not
square.
No.
And the same thing is true of the balustrade, and they have some detail, a little bit of
Right.
relief
They do.
on there, okay.
And they will be painted, I learned today, with a linseed oil paint because that lasts longer, so there's less maintenance.
Right,
There'll also be the posts, the holes of posts, the ones that are embedded in the cement.
Right.
Will be hidden within the posts, so you won't see those ugly metal things.
okay, yeah. Okay. And in the materials that were submitted, there's this wonderful 1894
Yeah,
photograph. I don't know
Yeah.
what everybody's doing in town there. I don't know what that event was.
that was a regular day. in
That was a
Idaho
normal day in
Springs
Idaho
back
Springs.
then.
On the
With all the
regular
golf carts.
Well, they're awfully dressed up.
Well, that's what they did, you know, I mean, even in the 40s, you went to work in a suit. And so, yeah, they were dressed up. I just like the dog in the middle of the road that isn't saved.
Those posts or the balustrade, let's do the balustrade first. Those are, they're hefty, squatty, and so on. What you're doing is simpler, much better than what you've got there now. It's a real improvement.
Anything
So,
is better.
yeah, I don't disagree with that. I
What's
just
up?
wondered why you decided to,
Well, in 1900, they built, there's a picture of when it was the
Bellevue?
Bellevue, and that was in 1909. And the newspaper article says.
and that's the one.
That's what we're gonna follow.
Gotcha, okay, all right, thank you.
And we chose the 1909 picture to follow because that's when the cement porch was first poured. And since the state was the only entity that wanted a wood porch. And Jeremy said, no, that's fire hazard. It's also a maintenance nightmare.
Yeah,
And since we totally rely on donations, why do that? So we took that picture so that we could keep the cement.
okay, thank you. Good.
Well, it's during a period of significance too.
Right.
Yep. No,
I feel like your balustrade looks like a mix between the 1894 and the 1909 picture.
Yeah.
I actually like the one from the 1894 better.
Oh,
But
I do
like,
too.
I like though that you have mixed them together. To me, that seems very practical.
And they'll be painted period appropriate colors. The doors and the windows, windowsill and that are a nice warm brown with a warm mixture.
Okay. What other questions do we have?
Nice to have good photo documentation.
We
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have that for everywhere in town, so this is pretty exciting that you
Oh.
have very clear documentation.
We have so many pictures.
Yes.
We will also be going to Fort Collins because the state requires, and she just wants to go. But the state requires that, you do a mock-up kind of thing. Although this isn't a state grant, but she, like I say, is following whatever the state would have done if we had gotten the grant. So we'll be going up there to do a mock-up and see what it looks like.
So this design was approved by the State Historical Fund?
Yes, because when I originally applied for the grant, I applied for the whole 9 yards, the building and the balustrade and everything. And they split it and said, no, not right now. You can have the paint off, but you're gonna have to apply for the veranda later. And so got to the paint, but the architect had already done the drawings.
And is there a reason that she didn't match the 1900 one like quite exactly? Like it's close, but it's still a little off. Was there a reason?
Just to be somewhere in between kind of contemporary and the 1909. It's just, yeah. I mean, because you could go back to the 1888 and be really ornate, but it just,
It's quite a bit more ornate.
Yeah, I think you make a great point with the concrete porch.
yeah.
I feel like
And
that's
so you can't really do the ornate with concrete. It's just kind of not there. But there will be 6 posts. There's only 5 large posts now holding up the veranda. There were 6 originally, and there will be 6 again.
Oh, okay.
And there's also
Comparing the
the
numbers
half
of
posts. When you looked at the paint, you could see where the half posts were on the wall. And so on the very west wall, or side of the wall, there's a half post, and on the east side, there's a half post, and those will be there also. So just in your mind, picture this all done and those wonderful flowers that we have all the time now in the summertime, and how spectacular this building will be for the beginning of the historic district.
And a beautiful place for the residents too, you know what I mean, that
Oh.
veranda, like to hang out with watch the people walking around.
They'll all be
Yeah.
sitting on the porch.
Yeah, that's great.
Right now, they're sitting out there on the porch just watching what's going on. Or they go over to Tommy Knockers and sit there and watch.
What other questions do we have? Staff or applicant? Okay, I will close the hearing at 6:25 p.m. All right, I will ask the commission for a motion on the certificate of appropriateness. Although I would like to amend it before we do that, I would like to amend it to include Dylan's addition of any changes in this will require for you all to come back and just go to amendment to your COA.
There are no change orders.
You know, I'm gonna leave that one to you, but just, I agree with you that
I have a very generous donor, but I'm gonna try really hard to save some money.
But I will entertain that motion.
I make a motion that the certificate of appropriateness be approved as outlined, with the addition that if any changes were to be planned out, that you would come back for additional.
Second.
I'd like to propose an amendment. And that is to, based on a finding that the project complies with the criteria for approval.
Oh,
Can you state
there's a change?
No, it's just saying that why did we make the decision? In case someone challenges the decision later, they will be, a judge would be looking to see what was the basis of the decision. And so by saying it complies, that's what the judge wants to find out. What the decision was based on.
I have
Makes
no
sense.
issue with that amendment. Okay, Ms. Wonder, I'll take a roll call vote on this COA.
Okay. Patty Tyler.
Yes.
Shannon Glazer.
Yes.
Clark Strickland.
Aye.
Vice Chair Michael Davenport.
Yes.
Chair Lisa Manifold.
Yes. All right, congratulations. Thank you, Donna. We look forward to, you are always welcome to come back and give us any updates. We can
Oh, I'll
see the
send you
updates.
all pictures.
I would love that. I mean, I go by it regularly, but I don't know that everybody else does.
First, keep in mind, you snoop around and say hello.
Oh, please come in and say hello. We recently had a swamp cooler installed and you can now stand to be in that. It is no longer a sweat box in there. So yes, please feel free, have lunch, 11:30, Monday through Friday.
It was very good to get thrift store in there as well.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
All right, on to the next agenda item is our public hearing on the request for a COA for a new lower level exterior opening. Ingress, egress stairs and other work at 1535 Minor Street. Thank you, Carla and Julie, for hanging out with us. The commission is required by law to hold a public hearing on this item. The order of the hearing will be as follows. City staff will be invited to give a presentation. The applicant is invited to provide any comment they wish, then public comment. Any questions from the commission may be asked and discussed. I will close the hearing and then ask the council for a motion on the certificate of appropriateness. Are there any questions? All right, I now open the public hearing on this request for a certificate of appropriateness for a new lower level exterior opening, ingress, egress stairs, and other work at 1535 Minor Street at 6:29 p.m. So Dylan, you are on deck.
Sure, so this, as I mentioned in the report, we approved a COA last year, and that included a larger rear door on the southern elevation of the building, a second story addition of about 840 square feet, and roof mounted solar panels. Since that time, there have been a few changes and additions to the scope of work, which we determined needed a new or modified COA for that. The work approved back in 2024 has not yet been completed, but there's a building permit under review, which sort of triggered the need for the COA. And there's been some interior demo sort of work that's been approved to work towards getting this all built. So this building was built in 1912. It's in the period of significance. There's historically, it had a lot of different uses, movie theater, vaudeville theater, those sorts of things, kind of arts and entertainment and events and all of that. And a key component of this project is to create an event space, recording studio and all of that, which is in keeping with the historical uses on site. Now, the big change is that because in order to get the space and have it work as desired. A large portion of the existing ground level floor is proposed to be removed, and so essentially digging down to below grade level, increasing the height of the ceilings, all this, which will be really good for acoustics and all that, obviously, Julie probably can speak a lot more to that, but because of that, the need arises to have a lower level egress for accessing emergency access, that sort of thing. This is proposed to be on this southern facade where the majority of the work previously was approved, like that new entry door. This would also obviously then have a small stairwell that leads up from that door that's below grade. So at the moment, on that one, you know, historically, there have been a lot of openings to access that kind of low grade existing crawl space, I guess you'd call it, or cellar that's going to be excavated to be a full large portion of the building, but it's not been just a door like this. In addition to that change, which in some ways seems like the most substantial, we are also seeing a new staircase to the back that leads up to the second story. That's also an egress staircase that leads to the second story residential and is existing. It also has a larger opening that was approved at the last COA was on our original drawings was shown on the east side of the building. They're now proposing on the west side, which seems like a minor change, but is still a change. And then the other change from the original approved COA that I think is worthy of attention is the change to the proposed upper level windows. We had a requirement or a condition that the windows on that south facade on the western portion of the building be broken up to resemble punched windows. And so you can see in the packet versus what have sort of around that change in the window design. So, and then you'll see in the packet, there's this sort of entry ramp that's used largely, I think, to get egress into the building on that ground level floor. That is not a permanent addition to the site. So you see like the lines there and whatnot, that is removable and wouldn't be needed for day-to-day operations, but would be needed if you're bringing equipment in the building or, you know, wheelchairs, that sort of thing. So reviewing against the 5 criteria for approval, as I discussed in my report, I looked at this across a lot of the National Park Service guidelines, and I'm no means an expert, so obviously a lot of people in this room have a lot more experience than me. But I reviewed these against those, and I included some of those in the packet just for reference. In my interpretation, I think that the proposed lower level addition, which is exposing foundation, or not addition, but excavation, is unlikely to have an adverse material effect on the historic quality of the building. As this ITS bulletin number 22 states, new entrances should be simple in design, blend in with the historic facade, be unobtrusive, should be done on secondary elevations generally, and shouldn't reorient the building or detract from the historic entrance, things like that. I think that in general means that. And again, is based on a need in order to excavate the building and install the new uses as proposed, isn't necessary use. I also, as mentioned, we also reviewed against a couple of the other bulletins, and I think in general, it seems like these have been considered as part of the proposal. I did look at our design guidelines, chapter 2, section 18, talked about windows, doors, and other openings. It says it does say avoid changing the position of historic openings, and it talks about avoiding adding additional openings or removing existing openings on facades that are visible from the streets. I think it's arguable whether this will even be visible from this. Likely isn't because it's below grade, but maybe visible from some angles. But the important thing, as we talked about in the past COA, is this is not the primary sort of facade of the building. And we do talk about, and I put this in here, the creation of back entrances for public access for new commercial uses as a potential recommendation. This obviously isn't quite a public access where people will be accessing the site necessarily, but it does seem like a way of potentially providing some sort of access to the rear of the building in a way that's not there now. The other thing we reviewed is against building foundations as included in the reports. This foundation really has never been visible in the past, but they're not proposing to change the foundation at all and just kind of reinforce it as needed. It appears it's been rebuilt and patched over time, so it doesn't appear that that historic foundation that would be exposed is necessarily a defining feature or contributing feature. So in general, I think that does meet the criteria broadly, but I think leaving that up for all of you to discuss will be, useful. I don't think the stairs have a major impact on the historic atmosphere of the building or the district as a whole. The existing staircase is not historic in nature. You can see it in the applicant narrative. It's just a utilitarian metal staircase. What's being proposed is similar in material, design, and the like. So that seems like a net neutral change. And I guess the exterior windows, I did notice there is a slight change to the upper level windows on the second story. To, I think in an attempt to meet that condition of approval, but I do think since we had that as a condition discussion on whether that meets the condition that the HPRC instilled on this property is met, would be another thing to discuss. In general, however, I believe that it is compliant with our design guidelines, especially given that it is not the main facade of the building. And as such is unlikely all of these changes put together to create, change, destroy, or otherwise affect architectural features of the structure upon which the work is proposed. And so with that said, I included a few conditions. If approved, the first one, as I mentioned, is the same as the last one. Any additional work beyond the scope would require new modified COA. I also included about two of them are kind of holdovers from the last time about the rear door substantially resembling materials and design specifications that were provided in the renderings, and that we would have to approve it prior to building permit approval and issuance. That final materials be submitted and approved with the building permit prior to approval. And then the last one I mentioned about that temporary rear ramp would be that it should not be in place except as needed. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that when in place, it slightly would encroach on city property. And so that's really the impetus of the condition.
Why it's removable. Yeah.
But as a result, I think when in place, obviously that has a potential impact on architectural guidelines that we have to consider. But given that it's removable and it's not likely to be in place, so permanently, I didn't really take that into account, and maybe it should be. I don't know. So anyway, that's
Carla,
it
do you
for
want
me.
to join us? And then you just want to introduce yourself for those who have not.
Yeah, and Stacy, okay. Name and address for the record.
Carla Booker, good role.
It could be you as a resident, business owner, or the facility is fine.
2857 Highway 103, Idaho Springs, 80452.
Okay. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Do you want to swear in Julie?
We totally can. Julie, just raise your hand and state your name and address for the record, please.
Julie Stevens, 1535 Minor Street, Idaho Springs, 80452.
Okay, and do you keep your hand raised if you would for a moment? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I am Carla Cole. I am the architect with Space Inc. for the project. Been working on it for a long time. Julie's got some great, beautiful, wonderful ideas. But nothing is easy when you buy a building from 1912, as you guys know. So, one thing I want to say is that I was not prepared to talk about the windows on the, and I do recognize that they are different than, and so those are not the ones we're proposing because we do have to come back to you guys with that final. So I'd like to table those because we know we're going to have to come back with samples and the final piece for that. So
I'm okay with tabling that as long as the rest of the commission.
Yeah, I think as long when we get to a motion that we have some language that clarifies the situation of these drawings versus the drawings that were originally approved, so it doesn't create confusion later on. So a year from now, someone could find what actually has been approved as far as the second floor.
yeah, it's a great idea. Sorry, I'm tracking the daughter. All right, so can I share? my screen?
Yes. Oh, yeah, I see you on there. Let me promote you to the panelist. And then you'll be able to share.
Okay. Thank you. Of course, on that one.
Of course.
Like, why is it not doing it?
I'll-
So what you're seeing here is the south elevation. Can you see my cursor? Yeah. You're seeing the south elevation. So that's what you would essentially see from the parking lot. And then this is a section. It's sort of a diagrammatic section. It's showing what it would look like when the ramp is extended and in place. That ramp is for loading the building for drums and other equipment when there's an entertainer in. And so let me back up. This will be a sound studio, a professional sound studio. So its primary purpose is business professional sound studio. The lower level will be also, it'll be utilized as a sound studio, but it will also be able to be an event space. And so primarily for the purposes of live streaming and looking like there's a crowd and live streaming and that kind of promotion, but there will be on occasion events in that space. So it is an auditorium occupancy. And so with the auditorium occupancy comes a much higher occupant load, which means we need multiple exits at that level. And so that is really the impetus for this door on the back side. We have one that goes to the front, out the front door, up the stairs and out the front door, and then this one would go out the door and up the stairs to the back side of the building. So what you're seeing here is if you were to cut a section, if you were to cut a section through the ramp, really what's under the ramp because it's city right away there is dirt, but what I'm showing you is how that door fits in under the existing elevation essentially. So because there's that stairwell, there is this small wall that comes up behind it here. And we're proposing that that's brick. And if I need to, zoom in on it. What we're proposing is that stairwell, because it's a stairwell, we need to have a guardrail there so that somebody doesn't just fall into the whole one. So we're proposing a small brick wall there, and the brick is so that it matches the brick that is building and it sort of blends with it.
Would that be right along the property line? Because if I'm
It
recalling
is.
correctly, the property line goes 5 feet off of the building.
It is, yes.
And I
So
think that
that's-
right now there's that wooden wall that looks like it's right on the property line.
That is correct. And I think you guys have this in your packets.
Me too.
Picture. So what you're seeing here right now is there's the existing door, which none of these openings are original. We actually did finally come across a photo, historic photo, and I can show it to you that, that actually shows the rear of the building.
We can see on the building, I don't know if everybody has looked at the back of that building, there's a number of bricked over openings, so there has been movement of doors and windows over the past 100 years.
Yeah, so this is a picture that we finally found, and this picture is not, it's dated. No, it's got a stamp on it, but I don't have a date on it. But this is Mountain Prime here. So this is the building that is no longer there and it's CenturyLink. Then there's something funky here where there's the park and there was the buildings. So there was that building and then there was the small bar that connected to this, but this is clearly the Opera House. And so at some point there were windows along that edge and the roof line actually, there was brick all the way back. And we know historically that opera houses of this age actually had the opera house, the opera floor, if you will, the entertainment floor on the second level. So it makes perfect sense that this is, that building was in fact. We know that there were at least 3 fires in this building, so over time. And we know that there's significant charring in the roof joists, and we know that the back of that building, that the first COA is approved to extend the unit up there, that was actually, it actually sits on like charred remains, on top of charred remains up there. So we did not have this picture the first time around. I actually stumbled across this photo in Nick's Mountain Kind in the old postcards. It was the old postcard. But you can see here those original openings in the back of the building, those 2 square ones. And it does not look like there were any other openings back there at the time. Now we know that there were 2 openings, likely when it was made into a movie theater, Mines Theater, that then created the storefront that was then filled with those storefront doors at some point. There we go. So that's these 2. So what we're talking about is that we would be enlarging this door. So all of this mechanical, electrical and gas and heating will be cleaned up and go away. So it won't look like that. There will be a larger door there that was approved in the original COA. And then there'll be a door and a stairwell basically on that side. That's what we're asking for. And with that, I have pictures of, oops. They're there.
They were there before. So-
Yeah, they. Okay. So these are the pictures. When you go down, most of the buildings in Idaho Spring, many of them, at least on that side of the street, have at least a small basement, if not more of a full basement down there. And so these stairs are right adjacent to the back wall. So this is the south wall that you're looking at. This is the interior south wall that you're looking at. So you can see some of the original brick in some places. And then there's what looks to be new concrete foundation, newer concrete foundation to that corner. And so this is that south wall. This is the corner. If you're looking, so that stair the stair and the door we're proposing would be right sort of right in that corner there. And then this is the west wall. So we know that the west wall that is shared with the neighboring building, that is rubble. From the explorations that we've done along the side to get quotes for shoring up the foundation, the foundation has significantly been repaired and redone on the east side of the building. This is the west side, which is the shared building with
Oh, the trading.
Canyon Trading, yeah. And then this south wall looks to be sort of a hodgepodge of some old, some new. But where we're putting that door, primarily, it appears that it is a new work foundation at some point. That's in that same area right there. And then along that same vein, there is an old coal chute on the back. It's basically in the center of the building. And what we're proposing is that remain an opening, basically to a storage area under the stairs. So it would just be an additional. So this is further down on that south wall. Not really sure what's behind this wood piece here, but from the exterior of the building, so you can see this has got wood ceiling up. That wood basically sits right in line with this exterior wall here, and that's that old chute. So the door we're talking about, the additional door we're talking about is further beyond these stairs right here. Does that make sense?
So the coal chute will kind of stay there, maybe covered up a little better, but.
It will, so so the stairs will go down over the coal chute and go back to this one. So that's that coal chute door right there in the center, and then the stairs will come down over it. And but there'll be sort of a small storage area. It's low bed height, but it'll be a small storage area. But that, you know, Julie could put chairs and some tables and stuff in there. Since we're building out that exit on the backside, and that exit's about 5 feet wide. Essentially, it's as wide as it can be. I think it needs to be 41 inches or something from that exit standpoint.
Commission members, the questions you have for either Carla or for Dylan?
Dylan, is the city okay with the temporary encroachment?
Well, I think there's a history of sort of along this whole Idaho Springs Mall, that for loading zone sort of things, people can do it, so long as it is for that loading and unloading. It's seen as sort of like just a loading zone sort of, thing, though it hasn't gone to like city council, but since it is only in place as needed, I viewed it in the same way as like westbound and down, loading and unloading their materials and things like that.
That being the case, is it necessary to address a temporary ramp in the COA application?
Maybe as far as like the potential conditions.
You're recommending a condition that it
Yeah,
be there, that the ramp be in place only when it's used and not otherwise.
sure.
There's a value to always having these things written down in case someone comes back later on and questions, how did this happen?
I don't disagree with that. I just, even if it were a permanent ramp and the property owner is within the property lines, I'm not sure I'd have a problem with the ramp there. I think it might well find it to be appropriate in the context of the what's being approved for the back of the building anyway. So that's why I just wonder whether that condition is, which is an operational thing rather than a building thing needs to be in there. That's,
Right, I mean, maybe it's not necessarily appropriate for the COA, and maybe it's more that when I were to go to approve a building permit, I say, hey, this is, we're not approving this as a permanent thing. And I could document it in that fashion, and maybe that's a more appropriate place for it.
But when the ramp is open, does it encroach upon city right away?
When the ramp would be in place, it would be partially.
Oh, that's what I
across the
thought.
property,
That's
yeah.
what I thought. That's why I thought it was listed as a temporary condition, because it does, that property line there is really tight.
Right, I think that like the
Yeah.
key thing I want to impress on that ramp is that it can't be authorized without city council approval to be there like as a day-to-day sort of permanent thing, because it does encroach on city property. And there are, of course, some areas on Idaho Mall that do encroach on city property, and historically have been there for quite a long time, but obviously that has no relevance.
And I guess what I would suggest is to say that the proposed temporary ramp subject to city approval. Because to avoid a situation where someone comes back and says, well, this was on an approved plan, so
Sure.
it's been decided by HPRC when it has to be city council to decide that.
Right. Yeah, and perhaps a note. Even if it's not a condition, I could put a note on the COA that the ramp is.
As long as it's written down somewhere.
Yeah, because we can't, that's not something that we can override city council on.
Certainly not, and I certainly cannot as well.
So can I, the intent of that ramp is that it is removable, but it will primarily, it will be there because there could be somebody loading and unloading every other day or something here, right? So for the most part, it could be there, but it is removable. And it's removable because if it needs to be, if it needs to be on, because it needs to be on city property. And there is, so what's actually happening here, I have an image of, but so there's the curb basically right outside of the ramp. So here's the plan, this is the ramp. And then this is the stair going up and the stair going down below it there to that door. And so that ramp is going to primarily be there, but it is removable because there is a sewer line underneath it. So it needs to be able to be removed when and if.
I'm struggling though with that, Carla, because that suggests that, it could be there all the time, which means the city may have to work around what you guys are doing in the building. And that's something that has to, that's not for this commission to
It's not,
decide.
yeah.
That has to go to city council because that is a temporary / sort of permanent encroachment on city property. And I know when we talked about that with the other aspects of this from a council standpoint, that council was like, no. I am very apprehensive about proving anything that would put a semi-permanent / sort of temporary encroachment on city property. This may have to, that may have to come out and be a separate discussion altogether. Because when you say it could be there every day, that becomes sort of semi-permanent.
Well, it's the nature of temporary, right?
Yes.
Is it temporary, is it removable?
It doesn't seem like we have a problem with it from the standpoint of a COA.
Right.
It's more of a concern. We don't want this to get lost and become a problem later. And so in some way, we just need to memorialize this, and then your client will need to work it out with city council.
And we know that.
So it's sort of a matter of, those are just two separate things. It's just as long as it's not forgotten in the paperwork here.
That I do want to mention, I suppose, though, if it's something, obviously, I think, let's say, any of the breweries are on city property for quite a period, let's say an hour a day, doing loading and unloading and things like that. But clearly they don't have anything permanently there, and that's the difference, is like, if you had to put it out every day because something's being moved in, but then you remove it, that is different in my opinion. So the question would be for this, and I do agree with Mike that we can address it separately. But if the COA gets approved as is otherwise, and then city council says, hey, you can't leave the ramp up overnight or that sort of thing, does that mean you can't then get the COA? Like the COA is no longer, you can't make it work with what's approved here. Like, I think that would be my question is.
No, I mean, what we're asking for approval on is really the opening in the foundation wall. I mean, that's what I was really prepared to ask for today, because that's what allows us to get excavation.
Right, but
Also the change in the doors, because that is a substantial change from the original COA.
well, the only reason I ask is because like if you're approved per this COA and then they say you can't have a ramp, like we have to come back and get a new COA because there's going to change, because now you have to design it so that there's no ramp
It's a
like that. Or
comeback
would you
anyway,
be able
right?
to?
Are they upstairs?
Yeah, we have to come back.
Yeah, the
Well, we
windows,
have to
yeah.
at least have approval on the windows. And I think that was I think a condition of the approval was that the board president could approve the materials of the beams. If there was no change to those drawings from the original.
Right,
those-
you wouldn't have to get like a new COA. We have, the way that the stipulations are written is that, the like final materials, locations, et cetera, be submitted to community development planner and chair of the HPRC prior to approval and issuance of permits. Though, I mean, really for number 7, it's not super clear that it doesn't really say what it is. It just says the windows shall be broken up so they resemble punched windows in keeping with the style of the historic district, and doesn't say that it has to come back. It just needs to meet that requirement. So it strikes me that since it doesn't stipulate how that gets approved, that it probably could be a staff approval, or maybe it can't, but that was approved, last year.
But it
so.
needs to be punched openings, which there's just been a lot of changing in that
Right.
upstairs unit, so that's why the windows at the time print looked the way they did. Could we, how we, what they're going to be, so.
A question on the ramp, is the ramp such that it could be designed so it folds over on itself?
That is completely the idea of the ramp, that it is.
So when it folds
completely-
over on itself, it's not in the right of way.
It would fold up and go in a storage area at the back of the building. That's basically, it could sit in this,
Right, so it'd be removed entirely,
Mhm.
essentially.
yeah,
And
it could be
so,
removed entirely, it could be moved to the side. I mean, the intent, so there is a sewer line down there. I don't know that-
I have a question, but that we hadn't really discussed before, Carla. Could it be hinged off of that retaining wall, the wall that's goes down to the basement? So that you could just pull it
It
down
is-
when needed and hinge it back up when not needed?
There's really not enough room back there for all of that to happen. I mean, it's just, we've got to exit the building, and so there are different ways we can detail the ramp. I guess I really wasn't prepared to talk about the ramp. I wasn't. The ramp has got to be approved from council. So, and we know that's, so we can enter the building. We don't need that ramp to be handicap accessible. We've got an elevator in the building. We can get into the front of the building. There's conditions in the municipal code that allow for handicap accessibility condition, waivers. So that ramp is really so that we can have a functioning event space and live venue, recording studio in there. We could actually do a different kind of ramp. We can order a ramp off of Amazon and put it over stairs to get into the building if we needed to. I mean, it could be custom design, which is what Julie would like to do. Or it could be a loading ramp that westbound probably has similar to.
In that case, it's maybe a fixture, a piece of equipment. It's not
Right.
actually part of the building. And I don't know whether this COA that is trying to solve other problems needs to address this or approve something that's not designed yet either. So
I think the question would be, for example, if we were to approve it as shown, and then for some reason, city council says to do something different, they'd have to come back again. Unless it's delegated to the staff person and the chair to be able to amend it based on direction from city council.
Well, and I suppose the ramp, I mentioned the ramp really only because it's shown on all the plans. Like if you hadn't shown the ramp at all,
Right.
because it is removable, then it wouldn't really be subject to, I wouldn't have brought it up.
Right.
But it's there, and so like, since it's shown on the plans that were submitted to me, I had to say, hey, this
Sure.
is not a permanent ramp, so. I don't know that it really, to Clark's point, I don't know that it's really relevant, and certainly where it's placed is not. That is a city
Yeah,
council
that's,
thing,
that's outside of our purview.
and if it's the sort of thing where you can just. It takes 10 minutes to disassemble, and ultimately, that's what you have to do at the end of the day or whatever to. Not encroach on city property in a semi-permanent way, then it sounds like there's potentially options to do that. It's so maybe it's more in the weeds on that than it needs to be for this.
I think maybe then we can amend this, that this,
And just
doesn't-
remove that.
just remove it, that it needs to go towards city council. My question then for the commission would be, how are we feeling about the foundation, doors in the foundation? And the stairs down to the foundation?
I think, adding the door in the basement level, since it's an existing one, that's a good thing. In other words, we're keeping a historic feature that's been there for who knows how long. I think the double doors in the basement is something the doors in the basement, they need to do for an exit anyway, so that's a building code requirement. So I'm basically okay with that, although I have one question on that. The way the double doors on the basement level are drawn, you've got the two door leaves. And it looks like the eastern leaf would block the exit path. So it looks like some kind of minor redesign will be necessary there because of one of the doors will be in the way.
Right, so what we need there is a 41-inch opening. And so we need to figure out how we get the 41-inch opening. So if that's a 4-foot door, it's kind of a weird thing, with a 42-inch door. But ultimately, I think, and that is a building code issue that we need to go through, because I think what the preference would be to allow for a 6-foot opening, but have one door primarily stationary when it doesn't need to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think on something like that, I'd be fine with that being left to staff. Because it's not gonna be visible, it's gonna be barely visible at all anyway. It's just that they will need to make some kind of change, although it may be very minor if you change the size of the two leaves.
But that would be more of a building code
Yeah, it's just,
concern versus an HPRC.
it's just that it will wind up looking different than what's shown on the plan we have.
This is not the final development plan.
No.
No, because I think we've seen like 4 or 5 iterations.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what we're asking for is a 6-foot opening in that foundation wall, and how that 6-foot opening gets, is it a 4-foot leaf and a 2-foot leaf? Is it a 3 and a 3? Is it maybe it is just a 42-inch door, that is, there's a lot of building code issues that need to be determined with the way it is, the whole project, because we have mixed use occupancies all the way up the building, and so it gets a little tricky.
I think the wider opening, having a wider than 3 foot opening down there is okay. I don't see a problem with that.
I don't
And
even,
the building inspector will have to determine what meets code.
what else do we have?
I do have a question on, and that's probably just because I don't know the history of that. You talk about additional excavation. I take it that that's already been approved, engineered, or whatever, especially when you start putting holes in foundation walls for doors. That's all been engineered, I guess.
It has,
Okay.
we haven't, I don't think it's a building that we're not changing, we're reinforcing foundation, which has to be done anyway, because.
Foundation just happened to make me nervous.
Yeah, yeah, no, I actually
Changing
have,
foundation.
I actually have the I have an email, I was reading an email from the geotech about, soils, soil pressure and everything, but.
Okay.
Because
It's
that's
being
the
addressed,
direction
that's
it is.
good, that was
And
really.
it's going through, that's the permit, the
That's
excavation and is the permit that Dylan referred to previously, yeah.
So this is a kind of a question of process, and that type of issue is back to the permit, not necessarily this committee.
Right, and
Okay.
since the building permit is under review, we, sort of caught and said, oh, well, you need this lower level opening in order to approve the building permit, so you need to come back here because that is part of this board's purview, whereas the excavation on the interior is not, I suppose, because it's only interior, really.
Yeah.
Well, and looking at your pictures of the exterior wall, like it, to me, looks very similar to the things that I saw, going all the way up the building, which is, there have been all kinds of, as different people own the building, you can clearly see where people said, I need a window here, or I need a door, like, it's very hodgepodgey.
It is. And so the idea here is that we get this building looking back like it should, a proud, beautiful replication of 1912, with some modern features and modern looking stairs that aren't, I don't know
Well, I
where
think-
those came from, but.
I think Dylan makes a good point in his report, in that the front is really where you see a lot of that 1912 influence. This was much more industrial, it's much simpler, I think.
But the stairs already been approved? Cause I saw they changed a little throughout the drawings, so
Yeah,
I
no,
wasn't sure.
that is, so we didn't, so the original, when we first came in, we had proposed an elevator on the back of the building and that was denied. And so the stairs and so that is one question, we have is the specifics, the details on those stairs and the railing, does that need to come back through? Because my understanding, I guess, and I could be wrong here, but my understanding was because it's an attachment to, it's an appurtenance, so to speak, that it's not the foundation, it's not the primary architecture of the building.
If I'm recalling correctly, we had a lot of conversations
We
about the
did,
stairs.
yeah.
And because while the stairs, the visual that we're seeing looks somewhat different and, from some of the documents that we have, the placement is not changing substantially. Am I remembering that correctly, Mike or Patty or Shannon?
I think so, and also a lot of what we're seeing in the new drawing is pretty much determined by code anyway.
It is, yeah. And it's significantly better than what's there today.
And those things are, they're
Yeah,
awful.
it's not great to climb up that existing.
So I-
There's nothing great about the back of this property.
I don't have a problem with the stair. But the other one to mention is that since this is still sort of staying similar to the historic use, I think that does count for a lot in terms of the project, because that is like the number one rehabilitation standard, is to try and keep the historic use.
Yeah.
And you're sort of trying to stay close to that historic use, so I think that's an important consideration in the project.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you from a historic district, as the resident of Clear Creek County, I think it's amazing that we have a intact historic district that has buildings that are still honoring the original uses that.
No matter how many problems there are to keep going.
Yeah, yeah, there is that.
Yes, there is.
Did we answer her question about the stair design? I don't think we did.
So the railings, like, do we need to, I mean, clearly it's not gonna look like what's there today. And I think you all agree that that's a good thing. However, do we need to come back, you know, when we bring back the windows and the wood samples, do we need to bring back design for the railing?
So when we did the design guidelines, this to me would fall under, what do we call it, a minor project, like,
Yeah,
as far, because the stairs are already there, it's a replacement of the stairs. This might be one of those things that falls under staff purview versus, and then if you needed to, I think we, made the stipulation that Dylan could also talk to, you know, the chair or the vice chair and just run it by them. Like I didn't, that the minor projects did not necessarily require a full commission meeting.
So as long as you don't change where the stairs are, just like a little detail.
yeah, you know, a lot of our small projects are things like gutters and downspouts, re-roofing, satellite dishes, and then mechanical installation, air conditioning, and things like that, that are like attached to the building, really, kind of like.
The stairs.
The stairs. Certainly when reviewing the building permit ultimately for all of the work that's done, you know, before these get installed, I will ensure that it does meet, kind of complement the district as I do.
Well, this goes along too with the requirement that the materials, you know, that are used in the design.
That probably does still fall under that original condition, but except for the fact that in the last COA, no changes were contemplated because at that time there was other options potentially being pursued. So this is just an addition to the last one insofar as now they are replacing those existing stairs with, you know, better, more code compliant stairs.
Yeah, and so what we're suggesting there is, and it may change slightly, but it would be like a black iron that is complemented to the district. It's not gonna be a cable wire, like it's the standard.
Do we need to get the final ironwork design approved by HPRC, or can we choose whatever ironwork design we would like?
I would think that would be at least going through Dylan. Because it is while it is an attachment to it, it is a design element that is exterior to the building, which is this commission's purview.
Sure.
They're
Very
definitely-
visible.
There are definitely metal staircases that would not fit with the district very well, you know, like you could design a hyper modern,
Right.
you know, staircase that would be like the focal point of the whole block and stand out like a sore thumb, even if it's really amazing looking.
But
So,
if it's under your purview, then when the permit goes in with the full details of the railing and all of that, then that would be, you would see that, right? So.
yeah, and I mean, certainly I'm. You know, I know this is just a rendering, but if it's something that's similar to that, you know, my view would be that this is compatible with the district, but, obviously
What are
this
your
is
thoughts
just a
on that,
rendering.
if it was something that was similar to this?
I think that looks cool. I'm okay with something that's, you know, a wrought iron or whatever.
Well, I don't, and I think if you're going with the idea, the overall idea that this is the industrial side of the building, if it got too ornate, that would not necessarily fit with the history of that back of the south side of the building.
Yeah, I think as long as it's vertical posts, that's
Yeah.
horizontal.
Yeah, and that's just a standard like
Okay.
kit of parts in AutoCAD, so.
That's what I was hoping when I saw the other one.
Yeah.
There's the stipulation 4 under the active COA, which talks about alternative
Mhm.
materials. Does that cover this?
I would say so.
I think so, we could just include that for this updated one, and then it's materials related, so ultimately we approve all the materials, and I just want to pass you or Mike as a good available or something like that. seems appropriate.
So how do we feel, just a general idea, how do we feel about the work at the foundation level? Do we feel that that detracts from the historical aspect of the building?
I really don't think so. The example still that you included of inappropriateness is mostly like this is mostly blank brick. And now there's like a bunch of windows in it like that. But this being mostly below grade, I think is fine.
How tall is the wall going to be above grade?
It's between 36 and 42 inches, so we need a guardrail, and so we could do a railing there. Yeah, there it is. So we could do a railing there, but we thought the brick was more appropriate because you just bring the brick up, and then it also allows us a place to attach the handrail coming up from the stair on that side, which sort of hides all the different railings trying to do different things, essentially.
And was the door opening has changed since the previous
Yeah,
approval too,
so
right? Because it wasn't,
Here to here.
it was at ground level before?
Yeah, it was ground level, but it was gonna be on the east side and now it's on the west side and this one's gonna be still be like this.
And is that for a reason that something on the interior requires it to be?
Yeah, so
at
the
that?
front of the building is actually almost 2 feet higher than the back of the building. So in order to meet we actually have a ramp inside the building that goes up because the elevator is now centered in the building. Since we couldn't do it on the back, so the back had to meet the front where the elevator landing is. If that makes sense. There's a lot of bit of a fun house.
Are you saying there's been a lot of moving parts to get it to one wheel?
Oh, there's a lot of moving parts in this.
Yeah.
Crazy. It'll be beautiful, but there's a lot of moving parts here, so, yeah. Julie likes moving parts, so it's good, right, Julie?
We're good on,
Form and function, right?
we are good on the work that's below the foundation. I would prefer, this is my preference, you all tell me what you think. I would prefer to take out, like, I'm looking at the planning staff recommendation, anything about the temporary ramp. I'm not comfortable making that kind of call.
But if it does end up that the ramp is going, like it's temporary, but it's there most of the time, I think it should come back to the commission.
I would agree with that too, but that would actually need to go to city council, because the way that ramp looks, it would have to go onto city property.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
like after city
After
council
city
approves the
council.
concept, maybe.
Okay. I think maybe we can table the ramp discussion.
Yeah, it's not critical, like Carla said, it doesn't seem like it. There's a way to make it function without a ramp, I guess, right? Like, obviously, you need it for bringing equipment in and out and things like that, but from the standpoint of this, I suppose, it's no way, like you could come up with a solution that's truly temporary. It seems like from what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you could literally order something off of Amazon, nobody
Right.
wants to see that or look at it, but you could do that, so.
Well, I'm looking at the letter from Carla and Julie. It's to create necessary openings at level 0 below grade at the rear of the structure through the existing foundation. So if we're looking at the planning staff recommendation with that, I would be okay with 1, 3, and 4 and take out 2. If we're looking just at what the applicant is asking. Sorry, you're probably gonna have to talk to us again. Sorry, Julie. You're gonna be here again.
Oh, that's okay. I figure we'll be working together a lot during this process. So,
We want to get it right, I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot going on here, and so we know that when there's a lot going on in these historic buildings, that everybody wants it right.
right. I mean, our goal too is kind of reconnaissance, is to find out what is possible so that we don't design ourselves, fall in love with a design we can't have. So
That is also totally fair. What are the thoughts from the commission?
I think along those lines, if you want to propose changes to the second floor from what was originally approved, it might be worth thinking about a work session before you spend a lot of time
Yeah,
developing that.
honestly, those windows are the only real change that I think would be and it just sort of slid by me. This, because I wasn't focused on those that ever for the last 2 weeks, honestly, so, but I agree, that's.
So we just need to make those into maybe a series of squares or something. Yes?
Preferably they'd be, you have a vertical orientation, or the way you did it before, where you had the main window and you had sort of like a transom window above it, as you did on the original plan, which creates that vertical feel.
Yeah.
As opposed to just a square window, which would not be
Not
would
historically.
not be traditional for this district.
But it would match the square windows that were originally placed in the back of the building.
It's true.
Well,
And along the side of the building from the photo that Carlos showed us.
Is there an interior reason that you want to have fewer windows up there?
We just want to add some light to those 2 rooms, one of which is a bathroom. So we would want just the light to be up high. And the other one is a bedroom. So it's just, we don't really even need windows on that wall. It would just be nice to add some light. So, but it does need to be up high if we add it.
we'll come back with.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm looking at how we rewrite this recommendation. Definitely want to take out number 2. I don't.
Can we read the recommendations maybe and?
Okay, so this is what city staff recommends. Any additional work beyond the scope of what is expressly approved hereby shall require a new COA application. Temporary rear ramp proposed to bring equipment and supplies into the building shall only be visible when in active use. When no active use is occurring, the ramp should be stored out of the sight of public view. The approved rear door shall substantially resemble materials and design specifications that were provided in the submitted renderings for the COA application. Review and approval of the door specifications by the community development planner is required prior to building permit approval and issuance. And number 4, final materials shall be submitted and approved by the community development planner prior to building permit approval for exterior work.
Yeah, essentially 1, 3, and 4 were sort of basically pulled from the previous COA approval, which is very slight language difference.
What's now 2 could be changed other than doors otherwise mentioned here. The originally approved elevations are being used for exterior materials and openings.
And here are the changes that were listed in the staff report. Larger grade level opening is shown on the western side of the building rather than the eastern, as was demonstrated in the original COA. This will be elevated slightly, necessitating a small concrete porch structure. This is the location of an existing exterior door, which will be enlarged to accommodate the 6-foot opening that was previously approved. Number 2, new staircase on the rear of the building to access the 2nd story, replacing the existing metal non-historic staircase. And number 3, below grade egress door with stairwell leading to grade for egress to level 04. I think that's pretty clear on what you were asking for, keeping that scope, taking the ramp out of it.
Please.
We can fight about that later.
Yes.
I'm okay with those 3 following changes with the conditions 1, 3, and 4. How do you all feel?
And like I said, I'd recommend we have something that recognizes the originally approved elevations, so that doesn't get confused with any changes shown in terms of windows or wall materials that are different in these plans from what was originally approved, because we're not being asked to make any of those changes.
So it would be something like the original approved elevations from the 2024 COA shall remain in effect for materials and window openings or something to that effect.
Yes.
Yeah, changes to them would require
Another
another
COA.
COA.
Yeah, I mean, so this is that previous set of plans, and we knew that we needed to come back with sort of the final elevations for those, for those. Right, that's different. Yeah, well, never mind. Elevation is different. The materials are all the same. But they're on the line.
Yeah, so you're not proposing changes to the materials for like that upper level, it's just the windows, really, which are still kind of in
Open to
view.
discussion later, yeah.
Yeah, just so long as we
And it's
reference
really-
these for the appearance of the building rather than the plans included in tonight's packet.
Right. Material board.
Right.
Yeah, and this stair. The orientation is generally the same.
Yeah. It's just a, you need a landing.
Right.
Nope.
Are you sure?
Yes.
This is
No,
the
it's
time
not.
to,
No, it's not it's a more general question for this guy, a process question.
go ahead.
General. No, it's,
Okay,
doesn't affect this.
so with those,
So one of the, again, for this application, just saying, based on a finding, the application meets the criteria for approval. It's always good to include a finding statement when the motion is made.
can we clean, if we are going to approve this tonight, can we clean this up and get like a cleaned up COA out to the commission?
Like the actual COA document, or
Yes, because we're doing a lot of changes.
like for like this sort of
Yes.
thing.
I just feel like we're doing a lot of sort of changing around. I want to be very clear what we're approving and addendums that we're making. Just because there's been a lot of discussion, and I think that your additions are appropriate, but it's not what we have, in our packet.
So are you saying it's hard to make the motion with all the conditions as it is, because it's so backwards?
It is. Can you let me know what you have for?
I got 5 pages, bro. Are you sure?
No, it's just like.
For real?
I could, let's see, so I guess like if you're gonna make a motion to approve, it would be.
Because I don't see a reason for us not to vote on it tonight, because I don't hear a lot of concerns or issues. I would like to do this so they can move forward with the excavation. I mean, I know how long you guys have been on this project. I just want to make sure that we're very clear what we're voting on, so there are no ambiguities here.
I think 1, 3, and 4 don't change.
Okay, so,
And number 2 can be changed to the clarification regarding the exterior wall. The materials are those shown in the plans originally approved in the COA in February 2024.
yeah.
Yeah, so like the.
And so
original
that's
approval.
what condition 2 becomes, which is more of a clarification statement.
Right, so it would be, so the motion might be something along the lines of motion to approve COA 25-002. And COA to allow for exterior improvements, including a new door opening, that sort of thing. Or just motion to approve COA 25-002 based on the findings that the project complies with the criteria for approval with the following conditions, or with following conditions, or you say the conditions 1, 3, and 4 from the staff report, and the 4th condition that original approved elevations from previous COA remain in effect with respect to window openings and materials as presented at that meeting.
Except that the openings have moved. So,
I think we just refer to the
Or the,
except as otherwise noted in these conditions, we're going on the elevations that were approved in February 2024.
Right, and I think it's specific, that condition we made was specifically for the second level addition, right? Or is it?
Yeah, I'm assuming there aren't changes on the first, but I didn't look at that.
Yeah, I don't think there are either, right? Because ultimately, we already had to think about the rear door.
Yeah.
Getting approved.
Yeah, I mean,
so-
the door, so the COA reads that a 6-foot opening is approved. It doesn't, the COA itself doesn't actually say.
East or west.
Yeah, and so that's where I don't know, do drawings get attached to a COA? Like, do they get recorded?
They normally should be kept with the
Which makes sense.
COA so people know what was approved.
Right, so I mean, certainly that's changing slightly, and I did include that in the scope of work of this re-review, of this new review. So I think Mike's item was more, I think, for the materials and the window openings on that second level that are still likely to change.
And sort of more, is more generic in terms of, it's more broad in terms of just the openings, as opposed to saying what the shape, style, or whatever is. It's just, that includes arrangement of windows.
Yeah, and I fully understand what the concerns there are. It's just, we got caught in between
So
design and presentation. I didn't look at the top. I apologize for that.
So the planning staff recommendation 3, which says the approved rear doors. We're talking about the doors that are in
Level one.
on the south side and the west, south elevation on the west side of the west end of the south elevation, right? So it's clear that we're approving the door moving.
The door moving.
And then also the new
At level
level
zero.
zero.
And then new level 0, yeah, so just something that memorializes that, just clear.
So I think that the change to number 2 is really referring to level 2. Number 2 is referring to level 2, and I think it's 3. Number 3 is referring to the openings shown for level 1 and level 0
On the south elevation.
on the south elevation.
Okay.
I don't have a motion for you.
No, I don't have a motion. No, I was making notes as we were talking about a way to encompass this. So on the staff recommendations, it would need to say for number 3 for both level 1 and level 0.
Your doors at level
1 and level 0.
Shall substantially resemble materials provided in submitted renderings, review and approval of community development plans required by the building permit approval.
Yeah.
Did you want to mention something about the final design of that level 0 opening, or do you think it's covered by that? Because there was the discussion about maybe it only needs to be 42 inches and there's a different solution, but it could be up to 6 feet.
I'm happy to have it go to staff.
Well, staff and building code, which is not,
Right.
you know, like, we approved a 6 foot, we approved a 6 foot for level 1. Level 0, you would like a 6 foot, but you may only be able to do a 42 inch.
Or you could say up to 6 feet.
Right. So I guess if we want a clear motion, I could read a motion. Nick sometimes does that, our attorney. Like if I read the motion I have, and then the 4 conditions I have, someone could then make the motion to say, motion to approve as was said.
Or they could say so moved.
So
I would like
Yeah.
that because, like I said, we've done a lot of changing. So before we do that,
So I don't remember how.
I can get that.
is there any further discussion or questions? Because we are still public hearing. All right, with that, I will close the hearing then at 7:40. And now I would like to have Dylan read the motion as amended via
so
discussion.
I have written motion to approve COA 25-002 based on the finding that the project complies with the criteria for approval with the following conditions. Condition 1, any additional work beyond the scope of what was expressly approved hereby shall require a new COA application. And 2, the original approved elevation drawings for the south elevation from COA 24-001, I backdated all the applications, so we'll just say that COA 24-001 shall remain in effect for the second level openings and materials. The approved rear doors at level 1 and level 0 shall substantially resemble materials and design specifications that were provided in the submitted renderings for this COA application. Review and approval of the door specifications by the community development planner is required prior to building permit approval and issuance. And number 4, final materials shall be submitted and approved by the community development planner prior to building permit approval for exterior work.
Just a question, final materials, meaning specifications or you mean the building materials or the paperwork?
Oh, I would say building materials.
For us, it would be building materials.
Right.
Yeah.
So final building materials shall be submitted and approved.
Okay, that's fine.
And maybe we should amend that, instead of just saying building a permit approval for exterior work, maybe it would be clear, like relevant exterior work. For example, for that excavation permit they want to do, the first step will be that they need to kind of punch the wider opening on the west side of the building. And so part of that building permit would be approving that exterior work, but obviously this first phase of the building permit wouldn't be the second level addition. So if it reads prior to building permit approval for exterior work, would we run into a potential issue of,
All exterior work.
yeah,
I would be okay with you adding relevant to that. I gotta feel.
or maybe it's just me being pedantic about it and it's not actually an issue then.
I mean, if you've gone through all this trouble, you might as well be accurate.
Irrelevant. Relevant, permit.
Add relevant. All right, with the addition of relevant, is there a motion so moved to approve this? I will make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion that needs to happen further? Hearing none. Just wonder if I could get a roll call on COA. This is COA 25002, please.
Patty Tyler. Yes. Shannon Glazer.
Yes.
Clark Strickland.
Nice.
Vice Chair Michael Davenport.
Yes.
Chair Lisa Miller.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Glad we didn't make Donna wait for that.
We were kind of actually concerned that we might have to sort through some things, so.
Well, yeah, I thought it was just an opening in the foundation wall. So-
Girl, come on. Come on. All right, with that, let's move along to old business. Is there anything further that we need to discuss? Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you,
Uh,
bye.
I don't have any old business prepared for tonight's meeting, but I think, it'd just be like our existing kind of work session sort of items that we get, especially like the buffer zone discussion. And that,
Yes.
I guess they just, for our next meeting, depending upon any applications you might get that require time, is that we look at doing one or two of those items we've identified, one of which is the buffer area. Second one is the historic preservation section of the comprehensive plan. And the third one would be, I don't know who you asked or not, but I think the other historic board
Sites and
was asked.
facilities.
Sites and facilities was asked about budget suggestions. So I don't know if he makes budget suggestions or not.
I don't know that budget has ever been
I think if there was,
of our purview.
I think maybe a potential budget discussion item would be, let's say we say, hey, we do want to do some more historic surveying. And in order to do that, we'll apply for this grant, but we need to match of this, maybe
Okay.
it's worth having a discussion, say, do we want to request some budget for those sorts of things?
Yeah, and I think one of the questions there is that we know from the survey plan, there were several locations identified, but do we actually need to come up with a public engagement plan before then contacting people in the neighborhood and saying, are you interested in your neighborhood doing that? Do we need to do that before asking for a grant without having talked to the people yet?
Well, Dylan's kind of doing that though, with this community outreach that he's doing and the surveys that he's doing.
Right, but I think Mike is right. It would be nice if we said, hey, we have that section on West Colorado that was identified in the 2022 survey plan. And we probably should have a specific outreach to all of those people and say, hey, you may not know that had that survey plan done, but you're in this area. This might be a great location for a historic district, and here's all the benefits that happen. And then I have some engagement that way. That would be sort of outside the purview of the company's plan, but is important probably before we start putting.
I would love to build that kind of outreach into our city budget. I would love that. And I don't think it's there right now.
Alternate. Even before we go around surveying, I think we need to update the code to create a mechanism for us to create another historic district. So instead of us having to update the code every time we want to create a new historic district, we just create a process in the code, which is what most local governments have with the preservation ordinance. And the state has all that language that we can just tailor to fit our needs. And that way we're already ready if a bunch of homeowners get together and like, we want our district. Then it's not coming from us either. We're like, you have the option, go for it.
You're talking a locally designated.
A locally designated, yeah.
I like that idea.
I can send you the, what is it, ordinance guide?
Yeah, that sounds good. I live in a stretch of 10 houses that are built within 20 years of each other. It's like right west of Safeway. And I think that would make a great locally designated district, but I don't want to really start talking to neighbors about it until I have answers to more questions. Like, does this mean I can't ever change my fence or the color of my house? People will want to know this stuff and I don't want to give them the wrong information.
Well, that gets to the whole like creating the fact sheets and informational sources and things like that to say. FAQs.
So maybe that needs to be our focus before we go into surveying.
Right.
Is getting our processes in order so that when the survey comes and when people have questions.
Or if we have a whole group of homeowners that are like, hey, we want to be a district, and we're like, we need to survey them.
So should we look at the regulations at our next meeting? And if there's time, also look at the buffer.
Oh God, listen, I will tell you from a planning perspective, we have to get the buffer together, like, we have to. Because we've already heard from the city council and probably planning has already heard from the people that are looking at buying Carlson. And that is squarely in the buffer. We have an issue that continues to be challenging, that is also in the buffer zone, that Dylan and I talked about this, had we had the buffer zone guidelines in place, we would not have this issue. That's after chatting with you, that is my thought process on that. So I think we have to get the buffer zone guidelines or standards or whatever we're gonna do with it in place. Like, we have to hammer that one out.
And Carlson's is the last chance to get that fourth gas station.
Well, yeah.
I vote for the gas station rather than this.
Well, when we did where that comes from is we did was it last year? Was it last September? It was last September, before any kind of buyers were on deck. The school board held a meeting, and it was a community meeting, and the overwhelming response was, we don't want a fourth gas station here. And I was thinking, wow, why would we even think about that? But it's because we have those 3 gas stations there. But that is our gateway. That is, because they're making, like, 240 is our focus coming into downtown. So I think, we have to get that right. And that's a buffer zone. But also, we're seeing things that are coming like to council that are in the buffer zone, that if we had buffer zone clear, concise buffer zone guidelines, we might not have some of the things that we're seeing. And
Well, and I think, like, obviously, our buffer language now does give some protection, right, or teeth, but it's not something that would come to HPRC, for example. It would be on, I guess, me to then present to planning commission and council to say, we really ought to require these features or whatever, because, you know, and there've been cases like the one at, what, 1800 Colorado,
Yeah,
where you were able to get into.
1801 or 1800.
And like, we were able to incorporate some design elements that better complement the district, but it would, you know, but there are places that really are a lot stronger, and there are legal issues that we have to deal
well, and the
with,
other question is, do you want to, in the buffer zone, do you want to bring HPRC in? I don't know that I necessarily do, but it's a question to discuss. Like, if you're building, redoing, doing something in the buffer zone, do you have to talk to HPRC? At this point, you're right, we don't. It's just planning and city council.
And conversely, if planning commission is looking at that and they have an application and they say, well, we're not the board that deals with historic compatibility. So you would assume they would want to look to this board for some advice. And it's sort of, this is a reason to go back and look at the regulations, let's simplify what we're doing.
So maybe the focus would be, let's start working on narrowing it down, what we want to see in the buffer zone, and how we interpret what our design guidelines say. But also, I like your idea of how do we streamline things if Shannon's neighborhood says, hey, we're ready, we want to be a historic district.
And also mention, we probably should change the name on the design guidelines to design standards. Because that's something that might confuse people, since that was a change, and I don't know if that has to go to council or what to change the name on the document.
well, we could always put it as an action item just to say we changed the name slightly, but I do think,
I think it'd probably be a wise idea to just bring it as an action item.
so I don't have anything on the agenda now for next month. So if there's no regular meeting items, obviously this one's almost took 2 hours just for the two COAs, so I do better than to put any work session things on here. But
Which we appreciate, thank you.
next month, I think we certainly could dig more into both of these topics and really make some good progress, so. I think if that works for everyone else, we could plan for just the routine third Tuesday of the month, which would be August 19th. That works for everyone. If it's just a work session, we probably can do it a different day or whatever, but if it works for everyone, we can just stick to that schedule. And I do think in our municipal code, it calls Idaho Springs design guidelines instead of design standards, so we probably need a code amendment to change it from guidelines to standards.
That could be a Carmen Nick question.
But that would be a relatively easy code. amendment,
So this is not old business, and I don't know if it's appropriate to bring it up, but it occurred to me that what they were looking for was approval to do excavation for their opening on that corner of the building. Pretty much that was it, really. And we got sort of wound up around the axle on what the ramp would be and how this would be and how that would be and so on. I know these things are all connected, but it was really just the one item that was needed
Well,
tonight, wasn't it? I mean,
that is true, but they did submit plans that show everything, and so it would be very, like,
I know.
it was difficult, I think, because they submitted their building permit without much time to turn around before the public notice deadline for this, so I said, well, if you have this full set, like, you need to show me what you want us to review. If you're including ramp and you're including different windows and you're including a new staircase, I don't think to Mike's point about materials, I think it would be difficult to approve that without kind of talking about those things, because they should have just included the lower level staircase and the lower level door, if that's all they wanted reviewed. And they did
And not
put
draw
that
the rest of the
together.
building, just draw that portion of it.
Yeah,
Well, they needed the main level doors too, though.
Yeah, but
They did all
they
the
drew
outside.
it, they said, this isn't what we're gonna do in terms of the windows and,
Yeah, I mean.
you know.
Yeah.
So it was an odd process tonight, I thought,
Yeah.
that one, compared with the other one that was so crisp and strict.
Well, I think what's
Yes.
complicated is they included
Yes.
plans that look different from what was approved. And
Yes,
that's been a problem of some applicants doing things without getting approval.
Yeah, but
Changing stuff.
Mike, that not only were they different, but they're also, those plans are also not what they intend to do. Because their windows are not figured out. I mean, they're not at that level yet. So I don't know what the
Well,
solution is,
I
but it's
think, you know,
weird trying to find.
given that
yes.
ultimately the work that they're planning on doing, they couldn't do the excavation without the doors, right? And I said, you have to come for that. Otherwise, they could have sorted all of the other stuff out separately, but I couldn't approve a building permit for
Right.
that includes those doors to excavate 10 feet or whatever, unless they came here. And so it kind of was them scrambling to be
Right.
ready for this because they want the building permit, last week.
I think the solution is another thing that needs to be updated, and that's the information that's given to applicants. In other words, if they wait until too late, they need to be told it's too late for this meeting. But we have done special meetings before to help an applicant out. But, so an applicant understands what they need to submit. And just making that clearer there's a section of the standards or the guidelines that say what an applicant's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that probably needs to be updated.
Yeah, I don't know if you could write a standard for what they shouldn't submit, which are,
Don't show me the whole, because I agree with Dylan, if you show me all the plans, and I was like, I heard that you were like, hey, can we see what the other plans look like? I'm like, I seem to recall this looked different when we approved it
Yeah.
last year.
yeah.
Like, I'm sure you guys felt, you were like,
The
this
windows
is not the
definitely
same
stuck
thing.
out like.
Yeah, because the windows were a huge topic for us.
Yeah, we spent a lot
This is one
time
of those
on that.
projects that has just been, it's challenging.
It's complicated.
And their designs are changing. What are we on, like 3, 4, 6, maybe?
Right.
And they didn't think they needed to have the excavation approved, they thought they just needed to have the opening approved. That's what that is in our guidelines, that to change the grade of entry is.
Well, and that's why I mentioned the staircase,
Yeah.
but like.
No, I know what you did, I'm just like, they did.
In a different scenario where they could excavate the building, the interior without creating a new opening, that interior work wouldn't. Like they could just do it with the building permit, or excavation building, whatever, and the foundation shoring on the inside of the building, it's just once they wanna punch that hole in the wall.
This is what, and unfortunately, we have at least one project a year that falls into this kind of category where it's a big ball of yarn. That's the best way to put it.
And as a board, in the last several years, we've been very willing to work with applicants by having special meetings, asking, are you under a deadline or not in terms of getting money? So I think the board has taken a good attitude towards if an applicant comes in to try and help them figure out how to comply.
But you make a good point, because the guy that is doing is it the Trafton building, the old wood shop?
Yeah, 225 15th Avenue.
Like, that was one meeting. That guy came in, everything was there, and he was grilled.
But his ducks were in a row,
His ducks were
in the
all.
same pond.
Yes, so I just think there are some projects that end up being all over the place.
Well, and I will say the COA for this project that was last year was much more complicated than this year, if you can believe that. I think we went into the weeds about every single little detail and then ultimately didn't end up with half the things that we talked about, so.
The whole elevator.
Yeah, and like creating.
That went to city council though.
I thought so.
Is there any other old business?
Nope, I will plan on having as much in the packet for next month as I can on those kind of two broad.
Okay.
topics.
Can we get it a little bit earlier?
Yeah, I mean, can folks make 5:30, let's say?
No, I mean the packet. Can we get the packet a little bit earlier? The deadline is noon on Thursday.
Well, I can get it done faster than that. I don't care. I mean, that would be fine.
So we have time
Because
to
no
go
one
over,
else
I mean?
submits
So I can read the minutes.
things. I don't know if it's a problem for you to publish it, like, let's say.
It depends on what's happening that week. I never know.
Well, and that is the week of court, right? It's court's the third, they have it first, so.
So can we say
We'll see
you'll
what
get
we
it to
can
us
do.
if you can quicker? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, Thursday. If you can, that'd be awesome. Cause sometimes when I'm out of town, I don't have a chance to. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to read the packet and drive up the hill. So it's probably not good. For this, it should be doable.
If you
Because there
want-
is only me and Dylan who contribute besides applicants.
Right,
Unless they're late for council, sometimes gets more.
I could read the packet and record myself and send you that.
That might be.
That'll
that might be
work.
more overtime
If you like
than you
listening
need.
to a podcast.
Sometimes you have voice assist, like
I mean,
sometimes, depending on what you have on your phone, you can get it to read it too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just any other old business?
just wanted, it's just sort of a personal thing. It's my first COAs from this process that I've had the pleasure of reviewing everything. I really appreciated the care and the detail and the staff review. They're really good. Thank you. So,
Dylan is excellent. Like,
Yeah,
we're,
I just-
we are very fortunate to have him.
We're gonna
Good
keep it
stuff.
for a while.
No, you're not going anywhere.
thank you for, yeah.
See,
No.
What's going on?
we're-
You bought a house,
It's
you have
nice
to
to be
stay.
here. I walk 5 minutes to work every day, so.
I-70 will keep him there.
You can't leave.
Then I would take a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:02 PM.
Both
Second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you.